So it's 6 o'clock. Welcome to this evening's public consultation event in advance of a future planning application for the new Surbiton Primary Academy. The proposed two-form entry primary school would be located on the site of the former King Charles Centre at the junction of Hollyfield Road and King Charles Road. I'm Daniel Francis and I work for Community Conversations, who are managing the consultation regarding the planning aspects of the proposals. For your information, we are recording this presentation and propose to add it to the consultation website later this week. In a moment, we'll be introducing members of the project team. The project team will then give a presentation outlining the planning aspects of the proposals. This will then be followed by a question and answer session. A number of questions have been submitted in advance of this evening's presentation from members of the public, which I shall address to members of the project team. In addition, if you have questions that arise during the presentation, you can submit these by using the Q&A function, and we shall ensure these are also asked during the question and answer session. I know that questions have been tabled regarding whether a primary school is needed in the area. The Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames outlined that it was required in the report presented to councillors at the Finance and Partnerships Committee in October 2019, which agreed the disposal of the site, and again in their school place planning strategy published in November 2020, which outlined their anticipated pupil numbers in future years. Questions regarding these reports and the data within them should be directed to the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames. By way of background, Spatial Initiative has been appointed by the Department of Education to project manage the development of the school, including a future planning application. They have been in discussions with planning officers at the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames since the start of the year regarding the forthcoming planning application. However, we remain at an early stage of the proposals and we wish to share the initial proposals with the local community in order to understand the views and what changes can be made. As well as answering questions this evening, you can submit comments and give feedback on the consultation website. Following the close of this consultation period on the 31st of May, we shall review all the comments received and, where appropriate, make changes to the proposals in advance of a future planning application. We shall produce a report called a Statement of Community Involvement, which will summarise the consultation responses and any changes made to the proposals. This document will be submitted alongside a large number of other technical documents as part of a future planning application. Following the submission of the planning application, the local planning authority will carry out their own separate statutory consultation regarding the planning aspects of the proposals that have been submitted. We're shortly going to be starting this evening's presentation, but firstly, I'm going to hand over to John Smith, who is the head teacher of Omnia Learning Trust School in Twickenham, to introduce himself and talk about the trust. So over to you, John.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name's John Smith and I am the head teacher at Twickenham Primary Academy. This is one of the 3 schools that are currently in the Omnia Learning Trust. So we have one school in Twickenham and we have 2 schools in Oxfordshire. One of those schools is in Didcot and the other is in Wantage. Over the last 5 years in which the trust has been established, we've developed an excellent reputation, and the school in Twickenham and the school in Didcot both gained outstanding Ofsted inspections in their first Ofsted, which is brilliant and has been brilliant for the local community as well. We're known for very high academic achievements We're known for very high academic achievements and our schools do very well. And we hope to continue to build that reputation with the new school that is proposed. And we hope also to provide an excellent school for the local community.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm going to hand over now to John Fitton from Spatial Initiative to introduce himself.
Hi, thanks, Daniel. I'm John Fitton, as Daniel's just said, and I represent Spatial Initiative. We're the main contractor who've been appointed to deliver this building on behalf of the Department of Education and also Omnia Learning Trust. We're a construction specialist as far as building education buildings goes. We've got many years of experience in delivering schools. and that experience translates into working closely with local authorities and residents. Schools clearly are naturally situated within residential areas. We're familiar with the constraints that are usually applied to such areas. We adapt our construction techniques accordingly, and we're sympathetic to the needs and more of those residents who are generally affected by such works. We're open to receiving comments, suggestions. We'll be doing regular letter drops, or we're proposing to do regular letter drops during the course of our work to keep local residents updated on the progress, not only of what has happened, but what is due to happen. So people are aware of forthcoming deliveries and the likes, or any potential disruptions to local traffic that might happen. And we're part of the Considerate Constructors scheme. We register with that as well. So should any concerns or comments arise as far as construction methodologies and the like arise, then please direct them to me.
Thanks, John. And now over to Brian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Kavanagh. I'm a planning consultant working on behalf of Spatial Initiative and who are working for the Department for Education. I am specialise in school projects, having delivered about 12 schools with the Spatial Initiative over the last 5-6 years, all very successfully, all in residential areas, as John said. But I think the benefit of delivering these schemes is that they're delivered, or they're constructed using modular construction methods, which minimizes the amount of staff, construction staff on site, and it reduces program significantly. So you're not living next to a construction site for many years, which is often the case with these traditional builds. My job is to assist Spatial Initiative and manage the planning application process. So with Daniel, we welcome any comments to be provided today. The scheme is not a fait accompli or anything like that. So the whole point of this meeting is to get feedback, and we'll be able to take that feedback and try to incorporate it into the proposal. So I'm looking forward to both getting the questions and both getting the comments from the consultations due to take place in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And now, Imran, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, Imran.
Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Imran Kasim. I'm an architect and a regional director at a firm called AHR. We are an education specialist in terms of architectural design, and that's the reason why we were chosen to support Spatial Initiative on this project. The company's worked within education as a sector for the last 35 years, and myself personally, I've been involved in school designs for the last 20 years. And in particular, the design of primary schools. During my career, I've picked up experience on education best practice, on the developing kinds of education, and then also how buildings and building design is developed over time to best meet the needs of both staff and pupils, importantly as well. I have a keen interest and a specialism also in off-site manufacture, which Brian alluded to just there, mentioned, and also energy efficient buildings as well.
Okay, thank you. And Phil?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Phil Smith. I work for Colmert Consulting Engineers, and we're providing the transportation and highways support to the scheme. So I've been preparing the transport statement and framework travel plan for the planning application.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan? Oh, we lost, I think we lost Jonathan. Oh, he's back. Jonathan, are you there? Okay, I think Jonathan, if we'll pick up, Jonathan is one of Phil's colleagues dealing with some of the other environmental aspects of the scheme, and we can pick up Jonathan later. So we'll now start the presentation. So I'll bring that up on the screen. So I hope, colleagues, can you see that? And then I'm clear the public can see it. So as we've said, we're here talking about proposed new primary school. We've got a problem, it's frozen. Sorry, bear with me just one moment. I'm just going to try that again. Okay. So colleagues have introduced themselves as members of the project team and from the organisations we're from. And just a bit of background about the site. As we've said, the Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames disposed of the site in 2019. The project is funded by the Department of Education, and as we've said, is going to be delivered by the chosen contractor at the Spatial Initiative. They're responsible for securing the plan permission and implementing any future scheme. The site currently comprises the two buildings that were the King Charles Centre, which has now been vacated. And the main building currently sits centrally on the site with another building sitting to the south. We're now going to talk about the scheme that's coming forward. I'm going to hand over predominantly to Imran, but I know other colleagues will come in at parts for technical questions. So Imran, over to yourself.
Thank you, Daniel. So this slide simply shows the extent of the development, the site for development, and the subject of this planning application. As I'm sure most of you will be aware, the site hosts the King Charles Centre, which is the building that you can see labelled there in the centre of the image, and there's an ancillary building to the rear. The rest of the site then within that red line is mainly car parking and frontage, and then the site also hosts some trees to the boundary, as you can see. To the north, on the other side of Hollyfield Road, we've got the Fish Ponds Park, and then to the east we have the Alexandra Park as well, and you can see that the play area there just marked by the road junction. So the site does enjoy a fairly prominent location on that road junction between Hollyfield and King Charles Road, and that is something that we have noted and have acted upon within our design proposals. There is a stream to the south of the site, which is backed onto by the King Charles Centre, but also the residential accommodation along there that you can see. And then to the east, we've a sort of a collection of buildings, starting with the British Legion Club that is labelled on there, and then there is also a square building that you can see right up to the boundary is the gymnastics centre, which is in close proximity to the King Charles Centre as it currently sits. Next slide, please. So in terms of the site constraints, as designers, we have to collate and to collect information about every site that we're looking to design onto, to understand what the push and pull factors might be, where, and that would inform where the building will go, and then what the likely shape and size of the building will be, given the any constraints, both within the ground and above it. So starting, if you can refer to the key in the top left-hand corner, the green line there shows low voltage cables that we needed to avoid underground. We have a sewer which crosses the northeastern corner of the site, which is the dotted pink line, and there's also an associated easement that goes with that we need to avoid with regards to the positioning of the building footprint. There's the waterway that I mentioned to the south, which is marked in blue. And then around the perimeter of the site, there's also what we call the buildability zone. So giving the contractor, giving Spatial Initiative in this instance, enough space to build the building. That's typically a few meters deep. So to avoid having to go into the public realm beyond the red line boundary in order to construct any building. In the dark pink then, again in the top right-hand corner, there's the road junction with Hollyfield Road and King Charles Road. There's a raised speed table in that location. So that's something that we would like to avoid when it comes to vehicle movements coming in and out of the site. And then also within the site, the black dotted lines there show a collection of various underground services within the site itself, which in part service the King Charles Centre, but also service the adjacent gymnastics centre as well. Now, other constraints is the proximity of the housing to the south, and there we need to be careful to keep a sufficient proximity from those houses to avoid any sort of overbearing or any overshadowing as well. So keeping our building footprint well away from that, as well as the stream to the south, are also two critical aspects of the design at the early stage. Next slide, please, Daniel. Thank you. So we looked at a number of site options on this site, and I have to start before I describe this one. One of the site options was to look at the existing King Charles Centre for refurbishment. That was done at a very early stage. Indeed, before Spatial Initiative, this contractor were involved in the project. It was conducted by the DFE, Department for Education, and that study found that the building didn't have the requisite space, nor did it have the suitably sized spaces to host a primary school, a two-form entry primary school that's being proposed, and also that the building had a significant amount of asbestos within it, which did make it very expensive and difficult to refurbish, and the value for money when balanced against a new build became swung in the direction of the new build. So that was a study that was done before any of this work.
Just to join in on that, Imran, as well, I think that the cost of trying to refurbish and extend a building would mean that we would have a larger footprint for not the same sort of resulting floor space, and you'd be left with the building which was thermally poor and less sustainable than what we can get from a new build. So it's both cheaper and more sustainable to build a new building, aside from the asbestos issues and step-free issues which Imran has already raised. So early analysis, if the Department for Education could deliver a school for less money by refurbishing, I'm sure they would, but it just didn't make any financial sense, or didn't make any sense logistically. So a new build was decided upon before our involvement.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So this feasibility option, this early option that we considered, had the building as an L-shaped building on the sort of western fringe of the site. And this was the starting point that we had given to us by the Department for Education, and we were asked to consider this as a way forward for development. There was a few things in this scheme and this idea, this concept that did raise some concern. Initially, the two main things were the proximity of the building to the adjacent gym, and any the chances or the risk of a spread of flame in the event of a fire between those two buildings, but also the fact that the building to the south was very close to the brook, and was overlapped or sat within the flood risk zone because of the brook. And so that was something that was, again, another constraint that was we felt needed to be more rigorously managed. The position of the building then also kept would have kept the development very close to the boundary, as I've said, which would have made it difficult to build as well. So we did, because of that, we did look at other options and other ways of fitting a building onto this site. Next slide, please. So our initial option was to take the building footprint as a three-story mass, as a three-story building, but arrange it rather than an L shape into a more rectangular sort of linear building. That linear building we placed in the north, at the sort of the top left of the northwestern corner of the site, which sort of predominantly faced Hollyfield Road and Fish Ponds Park. That put the hard play and the soft play areas behind the building, which was which is a good arrangement because it keeps children nice and safe and also away from road traffic. And it put the car park in the northeastern corner of the site, as you can see. Now what it did do, it moved the building away from the brook and indeed away from the houses to the south, which we felt were two big positives. But two negatives that came out of this scheme was that we still sat very close to the gym, as you can see with the sort of the red highlight there on the left-hand side, and then which still kind of kept us within the sort of the spread of flame risk was still live, but also the location of the car park and in particular the entrances and exits to that car park were beginning to clash with the road junction. So the raised speed table there and the road safety measures that had been put around that junction did not seem compatible with this particular arrangement and in particular the location of the car park. So we developed this option. Next slide, please.
We're frozen again, I think. Bear with me, sorry about this. Do apologise. There you go, Imran, sorry about that.
Thank you, Daniel. So we developed that option, and simply put, we basically swapped the positions of the building footprint and the car park, so that the building slid eastwards and began to address the road junction and was closer to that junction, and the car park moved to the west and moved away from the road junction, which we felt was an entirely positive move with regards to road safety. And in doing so, we also moved the building away from the gym, which was giving us that problem with regards to spread of flame risk, and it also gave enough space for the contractor to build the building as well. So we felt this was close to where we wanted to be in terms of a site master plan, and we used this idea then as the basis for development. Next slide, please, Daniel. So as we moved closer to our sort of final resolved master plan arrangement, one thing we did do was we took the building footprint and we moved it south ever so slightly, as you can see from that green arrow, and that allowed us to move away from the sewer and the related easements, and that then gave us a fixed building position that managed all of the risks that I'd outlined adequately as a whole, and gave us a site that began to work for the school as well with regards to pupil access and also access for vehicles and service and deliveries. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry about this again. You see that, Imran?
You can see that there, yes. So yeah. I'll just, I won't read the slide, but I'll sort of paraphrase it. So that much of the site is covered in hard standing. It doesn't create a particularly rich environment for biodiversity or indeed flora or fauna. So we do think that that clearing the site and adding in a mixture of different kinds of landscaping, both soft and hard, and indeed trees, we feel will both enhance the site, both its appearance, but also its attractiveness to wildlife as well. And not to mention pupils. In addition to the soft landscaping areas that we're including in the scheme, we're also including hard play areas and multi-use games areas as well. And then also, given that the boundary treatment that currently exists with trees, we're looking to ensure that we can enhance that boundary treatment, but also have a secure school site with a boundary fence that keeps our pupils, or keeps the school's pupils safe. Next slide, please. So in terms of tree planting, so there has been an arboricultural survey done. It's identified 15 trees and one group of 11 trees within or adjacent to the site. None of the trees are within protected by a tree preservation order, although we understand that Fish Ponds Park is obviously an area that has a special designation. We sit outside of that. It is proposed as part of this proposal to remove a section of 7 trees along Hollyfield Road, and 6 of those trees are currently built over a water main, which was marked on the site plan that was shown earlier, and they also sit within a tarmacked area as well. So probably have a limited chance of success over the longer term. So we are, however, looking to retain as many of these trees as possible. We have had a review session with the design review panel, which was nominated by the local authority. And so during those discussions, we did discuss retaining as many of those trees as we can, and that work is ongoing. Again, they're also proposed to remove 4 trees facing King Charles Road. They are also of low quality and built into hard standing, as are most of the trees on the site. But we are looking to look to see what can be kept and what is worth keeping with regards to sort of long-term viability. So there is a revised tree and landscaping plan, which is going to be proposed with trees in appropriate locations. And then there's also further landscaping opportunities to the west, the south, and the north on the boundaries that you can see, which will have a selection of amenity grass, but also forest school, sort of a forest-like treatment, given sort of clusters of trees to provide a forest school play area for the school's children. So here you can see the proposed site layout. So the proposed building sits pretty much as per the location that I showed on the final options appraisal slide, and the building primarily faces Hollyfield Road with the main entrance. That is, you might just about make out the text there that says main entrance there, which leads from the edge of the site to the front door of the building. There are other accesses, labeled pupil access on the site, of which there are 3, 2, one on Hollyfield Road, one on the road junction, and then one also on King Charles Road. And they all will allow access both before and after school for parents, to leading them into the playground to the rear for them to be able to drop off and pick up their children. At the rear of the site, at the rear of the school building, we've enlarged a hard play area for children who will be able to undertake a variety of different activities. There is the boundary treatment of trees, and then there's also a small fenced off area where the youngest children, the reception children, will play, that you can see there in the buff colour, immediately adjacent to the building itself. To the northwest, you can see in the dark grey is the car park. So there's a limited amount of car parking within that space. That car park also hosts a service drop-off area, so there's enough space in there for deliveries and refuse vehicles to come in and turn around and be able to leave the site in a forward gear. And so it also hosts the bin store, and then and also accessible car parking as well, which is sufficiently close to the main entrance along the front. The plan shows cycle shelters as well, and again, those are part of the proposal to encourage sustainable transport to and from the site. and then also a substation that you can see in the very top left-hand corner of the site there, which is just marked on the edge of the car park. Next slide, please.
Apologies again. Is that back, Imran?
Yeah, I can see slide neighbouring properties. So our nearest neighbour, the site's nearest residential neighbours are rows of semi-detached houses located to the south on Beaconsfield Road. And currently the south-facing windows of the King Charles Centre face those properties and are roughly 24 metres away. So the new school building is proposed to be sited further away from the houses to avoid any harmful impact, and in fact should make things a lot better, as that distance between the southern facing windows of the new school building will achieve a distance of 34 metres to the rear facing windows of the houses. So we feel that any issues such as overlooking or overbearing and daylight and sunlight concerns will not arise as a result of this development. Slide, please. So the proposed layout. So these layouts that I'm going to show you have been developed through a series of consultation meetings between ourselves as designers and Spatial Initiative, the contractors, with the Department for Education team and not least the Education Trust as well. And those meetings are designed to get the very best out of the scheme with regards to educational design, best practice, and creating spaces that will engage children and improve learning. The trust has got a track record of delivering successful academic outcomes, and the design of the school is there to support that. So in summary, with 3 stories, with a 3-story building at ground, first and second floors, and what you can see here is the ground floor plan. And in simple terms, we've our main entrance, which is the pair of double doors at the front with the blue rooms sort of clustered around it, and that's the reception space and sort of office spaces. And once through those doors, that leads you to a central corridor, which to the left-hand side leads you to the large green spaces, the main hall and the studio. And the main hall is also serviced by the kitchen, which is the grey box that you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, so the main hall is where the children will eat, as well as do assembly and PE when it's raining. And then on the sort of south side of that corridor, you then got two sort of peachy coloured spaces, which are the reception classrooms, which relate to the outdoor play area that I referred to on the site plan. And then the sort of ancillary spaces around that, storage and toilets and other bits of offices as well. And on this floor, there's also some resource space. There's a yellow spaces there where children will be able to do a mixture of activities, whether it's access IT or read books, or to have small group sessions with teachers and teaching assistants as well. Next slide, please. So going up the building then, the plan becomes much more logical and readable. So it's essentially it's the remaining classrooms that are now arranged on the upper floors. On this floor here, we have classrooms for years 1 and 2, so the remaining infant classrooms, which are serviced by sort of those banks of toilets that you can see, being the youngest children. And then the other 2 classrooms there, the remaining classrooms on the right-hand side, are the first of the junior classrooms as we go up the building. So that's years 3. And again, on this floor, we have yellow spaces, which are the resource spaces to support learning outside of the classroom. I should also say that there's a centrally placed lift as well within the middle of the plan, and that sort of straddles almost equidistantly between the 2 stairs at the ends of the corridors, left and right. So that gives more than adequate provision for vertical circulation, both for able-bodied people and also the disabled as well. Next slide, please. So the second floor plan, the top floor, gives us hosts the remainder of the junior classrooms, so years 4, 5, and 6. What we see here are sort of the form rooms, if you like, the class bases for those year groups. But also up here, there's a specialist food and technology sort of space, a practical space where children will be able to do a variety of different practical activities, experiments, cooking, and the like. And that has adequate storage with it, and is sort of centrally placed on this floor to allow a sort of equal access from all parts of the building. Next slide, please. Our roof plan is our roof is a flat roof or a minimum pitch roof, which will be hidden behind a parapet, so it shouldn't really be seen. It hosts a couple of things. It's going to host an array of solar panels, which will contribute to the sort of on-site energy generation sort of capability of the building and the site, and will reduce its sort of carbon generation during its operation. And then also on the hall itself, on the hall, you can see 4 roof ventilation units, which passively ventilate the hall, so don't require any energy to keep that space supplied with fresh air. And then above the kitchen there, to the south of the hall space, there will be some plant equipment which will be designed to extract smells and the like from the kitchen and exhaust them away from any public areas. Next slide, please. So in terms of the building appearance, our part of our task when designing schools is to design them in such a way that the internal environment in classrooms and anywhere within the building is absolutely optimal with regards to daylighting and ventilation. So what we do is avoid build-up of CO2 in spaces, so providing lots of fresh air, but also providing windows of a certain size and shape that gives us not only lots of nice natural daylight within spaces, but also uniformity of that daylight as well. So we're not getting too much glare or too many dark spots and too many bright spots. And that very much drives the arrangement of the look of these buildings with regards to the window arrangement. So what you can see here on the north elevation and the south elevation are the 2 principal elevations, the north one facing Hollyfield Road. You can see a fairly regular pattern of windows which relate to classrooms behind them, and they are designed to provide those sort of strictly controlled levels of daylight, but also by the opening lights and also associated window grills above each of those windows also provide fresh air and ventilation to those spaces as well. So the other part of the building design is robustness and also sort of longevity as well. So everything that you can see on these drawings is chosen. The materials are chosen to meet those 2 specific criteria. So what we've opted to go for is a dark grey brick at the base of the building, and then also that same brick treatment is used to clad the hall space, which is the shorter of the 2 buildings on the north elevation, the hall being on the right hand side. And then above that grey, the sort of the brick base or the brick slip base is a cladding material that we've opted for, which comes. We've chosen 2 separate tonal colours to give a sort of a natural look to the building, which doesn't look too out of place with regard to its sort of natural setting, but also shouldn't age, because we've avoided using sort of bright colours and anything too sort of outlandish or controversial. Now these elevations, and I'll show you some 3D images shortly, have been the subject of conversation with the design review panel and the local authority. So they're by no means the final version of what the building is going to look like. And so we are doing sort of further analysis on the building appearance and on the material selection to address some of the comments that have come from that review process with the local authority. And just to give you a bit of an insight into that, you know, we've been asked to try and make the building reflect its natural context, Fishponds Park opposite, but also Alexandra Park to the east a little bit more, and to sort of draw that into the look and appearance of the building. So that is something that we are looking to do as a process prior to any planning application. Next slide, please, Daniel. So I mentioned the materials. So the cladding material at high level is a material called Seadral. It is a sort of a cement panel based system, and you can see that it can be used both sort of vertically and horizontally. And as I said, we've chosen tonal colours to sort of avoid any sort of aging, if you like, or any sort of, you know, trying to avoid making any sort of a fashion statement, if you like, and keeping the building sort of longevity intact. Next slide, please. And then also, as I mentioned, at the base of the building, there's a brick slip range screen cladding. So as Brian mentioned earlier, and I think I perhaps mentioned too, that these buildings will be, this building will be manufactured, it's proposed for it to be manufactured off-site in a factory environment. And so wet trades such as brick and masonry will be sort of superseded by systems that you can see here, which will give us a similar level of robustness and longevity, but also allow for much higher standards of quality that can be achieved within the factory manufacturing process. Next slide, please. So here are some existing and proposed visuals. So this is a photograph looking towards the King Charles Centre from Hollyfield Road. And as you can see, there's the trees there on the boundary of the site and the building itself. I can go to the following slide, and this same vantage point now shows us the proposed building sat much closer to the road junction, and with the King Charles Centre obviously removed following its demolition. This is a view from the road junction of Hollyfield Road and King Charles Road. As you can see, the trees in the sort of middle ground and the King Charles Centre in the rear. And from here, again, we can see the building sat much closer to the road junction, much more prominent, but also much more accessible to the public, we feel, as well, with the car parking tucked around the side of the building rather than in the front. I must say, one of the issues that was raised during the review process was the retention of trees on the site, and that is something that we are looking to achieve, and that is part of our sort of thinking as we lead up to the submission of this application. Next slide, please. And then again, here you can see the view from King Charles Road, the trees on the edge of the site, the sort of the copper beech, I think it is, tree, sort of in the middle ground, in the centre of the image, King Charles Centre to the rear. And if we can go to the next slide, again, you can see that we'll be able to, we're confident we can retain these trees. And also then you can see the building appearing there. Behind those trees in the location proposed. In terms of on-site transport and access, Phil, are you going to cover this bit?
Don't mind, I can do if you want, Imran. Yep. Well, as the slide says, that the access is proposed off Hollyfield Road. And as Imran explained before, by moving it further away from the Crossroads junction, it makes for a safe arrangement, less conflict with the existing traffic movements. The car park at the west end would include the 15 spaces for staff, 2 of which are to mobility standard. And the servicing arrangements for the school are also intended to be achieved there, so there'll be no on-street parking by service vehicles. We'll go on later, I suppose, to discuss things like the travel plan, which will be implemented at the school to hopefully reduce both staff and pupil car travel. The existing vehicular access from King Charles Road is going to be stopped up. they're not suitable for use, not only from the layout point of view, but they're also very low standard at the moment. But also in line with the TfL requirements, the proposals will include the 57 long-term and 5 short-term cycle spaces in a secure shelter to encourage cycling as a mode of travel to the site as well. Imran's touched on the pedestrian access. The distribution, although the site sits pretty much centrally within the intended catchment zone, the distribution means that we do anticipate that quite a lot of the pedestrian access will be gained from the north and the west. So the 2 points of access, possibly off Hollyfield Road, are intended to cater for that. And then we've got the point of access of King Charles Road, which is aligned pretty much with where there's an existing crossing facility from Alexander Drive. So that's it really on that. Hand back to you, Imran.
Phil, I don't know, did you want to touch on the travel surveys as well, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. As this slide is saying, what we've done, we based there was a feasibility study done for the Department of Education anyway early on, which looked at possible trip generation and so on, and we validated that. It was based on looking at census data for some similar local schools, so that there was a foundation for the predictions, if you like, in terms of vehicle movements, and that predicts that basically 2/3 of trips are expected to be by non-car modes, with walking the predominant mode, as they're basically 58% of people. As I said, the school sits very much centrally within the expected catchment, and so there's it's well located to encourage walking from each area of the catchment. The number of vehicles expected to the number of pupils, I should say, expected to come by car. The 93 car movements there that's shown is at full occupation of the school, and it's important really to point out that as the school will grow in pupil numbers progressively over 7 years from the point of opening, in the first year there's expected to be 60 pupils, and that will result in something like 12-13 car movements. And then the same amount, if there are no interventions through the travel plan and everything, the same amount would be added year on year, so that when you got to full occupation 7 years in, there's a possible 93 car movements. We're hoping, obviously, through a robust travel plan, as is already implemented at the other GEM sites, that will better this prediction, but it's based on those existing schools, and so gives a robust baseline. Similarly, the staff commuting patterns, based on the same sort of basis that looking at existing activity at similar schools. So with the result that the car park, although it's only quite small, has sufficient capacity to cater for the 11 staff movements that we anticipate, and also have a couple of spaces for visitors. There are things that will obviously dilute. We won't have a situation where all of the staff will all obviously turn up in a short period of time because of the start and end of day for them. The car movements associated with the school will obviously be more spread out. We'll have things like not only people combining it with maybe a commuting journey or whatever that has that effect, but also breakfast club and after school clubs and things like that, that mean that typically both in the morning and the afternoon, vehicle movements are spread out over an hour or more. So though we've got this headline figure of 93 cars, that won't be a coincident figure at the site. It'll be spread out and therefore much more manageable. Is there another slide on transport, or?
I was going to hand over to John Smith at this stage.
Okay,
to talk about travel plan in terms of what they existing do at Twickenham and what they would propose to do here in Surbiton. So over to you, John. John, you're on mute. Sorry, just to.
Hi, sorry. We have a number of things at Twickenham, and one of the key sort of principles that we use in the morning is that we have a soft start, and the soft start takes place from 8:30 a.m. until 9 o'clock when there's registration. And that means that all the parents aren't arriving at once. So actually throughout the morning is a calm start, and there's not lots of traffic sort of outside the school street. We also have a breakfast club in the morning and a number of extracurricular clubs as well, which helps take the weight off the school. Over this school, there are a number of planning conditions, and one of those actually is that there are named streets that our parents can't park on, and obviously, and one of those streets is outside of the school. So that is always that's also helpful with sort of the local sort of area. We really do encourage at the school sort of active travel, so either walking to school, cycling to school, parking and striding. We have many of our children who come to school on scooters, and that has all helped with the travel plan over the years. We're really robust with it here, and as part of our caretaker's role in the morning and in the evening, he's checking on the parents and where they are parking to ensure that they're not following the school travel plan. And when we have any new admissions at the school travel plan is something that is gone through with every parent, so they fully understand what they're signing up to. So I think some of those sort of conditions could be something that could be used at the new school, and I think would certainly help with the school travel.
Okay, thanks, John. Thank you for that. John Fitton, are you here to talk about the construction timetables?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So yeah, demolition. We're hoping to commence roundabouts end of this year, maybe. Obviously, having permission being granted round about end of November this year, we will commence demolition on the existing King Charles building. And then, as has been mentioned earlier on, we'll then commence construction on the new building, which will be speeded up by our methodology of utilising off-site construction methods. We're a modular specialist, so this building will comprise round about 60 modules, which would be delivered on over a period of around about 7 or 8 a day, and then from that we would move on to the building of the new landscape and play areas for the rear of the school, and at the same time we would progress the fit out of the building, the cladding of the building, and the roofing and the installation of the mechanical and electrical equipment and the like.
Okay, thanks, John. And just to, I know this is on the Consultation website, but timescale wise, we're here at the moment, obviously carrying out public consultation during May. It is hoped, but obviously that is subject to delay potentially, that a plan application could be submitted in June, and in that instance there would be a determination, we would hope, by the Royal Borough of Kingston of the plan application this autumn. If all those timescales were met, the school would be able to open in September 2022. However, as I've said, those timescales are clearly subject to delay, and if that were the case, it could be 2023 when the school were to open. In terms of feedback, obviously you're all here tonight watching, so you've all been visited the consultation website. It's there, it's live, it has the consultation boards outlining the proposals. It also has the frequently asked questions page, but obviously we're about to answer questions that have been tabled either in advance this evening or this evening. And we're also aiming to post videos of this event onto the website. If you've got any further comments or feedback, please do enter them by the feedback page, and please do try and ensure that we receive those by the 31st of May, and so we can consider them before we pull together that statement of community involvement in advance of a planning application. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I've got some questions that we're going to start with that were tabled before this evening, but I'm conscious as well there's been a number of questions submitted during the event, and we'll be turning to them. I'm going to try my best and do them in subjects, but that may not be completely straightforward. But firstly, on the consultation, one of the questions was, will the consultation be recorded? Well, we've covered that. They will be recorded. They will be put onto the consultation website. Clearly, these aren't normal times. Normally, we would have hired a local community centre, church hall kind of event and had a public consultation. Clearly, we are not able to do that still because of COVID regulations. So we are doing our utmost with these two live consultation events, and obviously receiving comments via the feedback via the website, and there's also the free phone number and free post details which are on the website. The next question was, will the feedback from the consultation be published anywhere? Yes, it will be published in that statement of community involvement. So we'll collate all that feedback and any changes that have been made to the scheme, to the proposals as a result. And that statement of community involvement will be one of the documents that would be submitted as part of a plan application. And all those documents are available for the public to review when there is a planning application. The next question is on school places. Again, we covered that very briefly at the start, but the data that we were basing the need for school on, well, that's the Royal Borough of Kingston's data, which they submitted to councillors at committee in October 2019 at the Finance and Partnerships Committee, and again in the school place planning strategy, which they published last year. And any further questions on the data in that would need to be submitted to the local authority. It's their data, and are asking for more school places based on that data. And also on the land disposal, one of the questions submitted was, why did the council not consult on this before selling the land? Again, we would need to refer you to the local authority on that question. We are a special initiative, have been appointed, as we've said, on behalf of the Department for Education, and the local authority's role in this at this stage would be to determine any future planning application. It's not their application. I'm going to go over to design materials. I'm conscious that a lot of this has been covered, but I know Imran predominantly, but also Brian, I'm sure, will want to come in. So the first question we've got is, the materials and colours chosen for proposed building are not in keeping with the surrounding buildings, nor with the style of the building currently on the site. And would you be open to changing the design? I know you've covered that briefly anyway, but over to you, Imran. Imran, you're on mute.
I'm getting used to this. Yeah, as I mentioned, we are still in the midst of a process of design of the elevations. We've been through various design reviews with the local authority and a design review panel, which has consisted of other design professionals, and they've been complimentary and critical as well, and the subject of the building elevations has come up. So yeah, we are looking at those. As I mentioned, that some of the recommendations were, can it be made to look reflect more the sort of its more natural environment? So that's something that we'll be looking to do. I think that will be a positive response. As for why or whether or not it should look like it's like the sort of residential accommodation in that area, we did look at the neighbouring properties, the housing stock around there, and also the buildings, and there was, I think it's fair to say, there's a wide variety of architectural styles and so there's no one sort of building aesthetic or architectural sort of a style that we felt would be appropriate for a new building. So we decided to make it self-referential and to stand on its own two feet, if you like, with regard to its appearance. And again, that includes the appearance of the King Charles Centre. The King Charles Centre is of its time, a 1930s building. I don't feel it would be an appropriate or positive architectural move to simply copy that. And I think it would probably draw criticism in equal measure if we did. So we are looking for high quality design. We are looking to to respond to constructively to the comments and the criticisms that have been received, and when I say criticisms in the broadest term, and yeah, we hope to submit something that is a cohesive response to all of those things, and a positive response. Yeah.
Okay, and following on from that, question that's been tabled tonight, So by bringing the building onto the edge of the property boundary, the residents concerned, it will dominate the feeling of the area around King Charles Road and the open space currently in place from the parks. And what consideration has been given to the impact on the north side?
Yeah, I mean, putting a school on this site is a is in itself a challenge. It's not a gigantic site. I think it's fair to say anybody would accept that. So our sort of some of the primary drivers around the location of the building are creating enough space, outdoor space for the benefit of the children who will be using the school. So creating enough play space and outdoor space, having that space in the right place on the site. So having it in a secure place and ideally away from the road and away from boundaries. So that's why they're behind the school. And so that therefore then pushes the school to the front into a more public and prominent position. But that does give us the opportunity then to make the school itself, the thresholds, the entrance more inviting. And that is something again that we're looking to do as part of our review of the building appearance and elevations. And so again, we feel that that perceived negative, I think, could be quite easily turned into a positive.
Just to add to that, if you look along Hollyfield Road from aerial views, the majority of the main buildings on Hollyfield Road actually do relate to the footpath. So they're almost all built up to the street edge. Now, ours won't be built up to the street edge, ours will be set back. And we've had discussions in the last week, in fact, about retaining all of the trees of good quality along Hollyfield Road. So the building will be set back and partially screened by the existing tree cover. So we're doing our best to protect the trees and screen the building while, as Imran said, there's other benefits to the actual function of the school.
Okay, and I'm going to move on to some other questions also about building design, etc. So the next one is the scheme compliant for amenity, play and sports provision? And is there enough space on the site for the number of anticipated pupils?
Okay, so I mean, there are a set of guidelines that the DFE publish with regards to sort of target areas for space, or the sort of recommended areas for external space, both hard and soft and sporting space. They are guidelines, so they're not mandated, but we use those as a measure of how a building can fit on a site, and the level of amenity and functionality that can be provided for a school setting. Here, I think it's fair to say, like I said before, it is a small site, but that's probably no different to many other sites in London boroughs. I think it's fair to say. So we're working in constraints that are fairly typical of sort of new primary school developments. We feel that there's enough space to create the amenity, the outdoor amenity, to support the curriculum and also to support positive play and social activity, and indeed to keep people safeguarded as well. So in the round, we feel the scheme works.
And just to add to that, Imran and AHR have the unenviable task of complying with books upon books of output specification standards set by the DFE, and we won't be allowed to submit a planning application until the Department for Education are satisfied that the scheme is compliant. So any scheme that is eventually submitted will sort of need sign off from the DFE that it meets their standards in the first place before it even is looked at by a planning department.
Okay, I'm going to obviously that as we said, will form part of determination planning stage. So I'm going to turn to the Muga. So how big is the Muga is one of the questions, and then the other question is, how would you plan to shield residents or local residents from noise from the school, both during and after hours, especially from the Muga, but also from children playing elsewhere on the rear of the site?
So the Muga as an area allocation, and the current design sort of uses that area allocation together with the allocation for sort of general hard play. So to give the school as much flexibility as possible. So many Mugas are sort of fenced off areas, sort of rectangular generally with line markings on them for tennis and whatnot. Here the approach is slightly different from that. And so we've got a much more free-form area that can be used flexibly, both as a sports provision, but also as a sort of a play area generally as well. In terms of acoustic protection or attenuation, there is a proposal for an acoustic boundary to the south of the site, which will shield. Is designed to shield the residents to the south from the effects of any acoustic intrusion from the school, from within the school site itself. And so that is the main means by which that will be achieved.
Yeah, we have, just following up on that, we have an acoustic consultant on board who does a test of the existing acoustic levels, and they will be advising us, say this is a play space that's going to be used by, however many number of pupils are going to be in the play area. What will be the noise level then, and will that be acceptable? There's an actual decibel level that we're not allowed to go past. I think it's 5 decibels below the ambient noise level that's existing. So we will need to demonstrate that our scheme will not surpass that decibel level before the planners would approve the scheme. So we need to demonstrate that we've dealt with acoustics within our planning application. So that work is being undertaken as we speak, and there will be a detailed report within the planning application.
And there's some follow-ons from that, really. Firstly, why can't the play areas Mooga be at the front of the site if the walls and boundaries are secure enough? But also, will there be lighting for Mooga, and how high is the Mooga fence?
I'll pick up the point about the location of the play area. So as I mentioned, I'll mention it against a previous question, our goal was to put the building at the front of the site and have the play area as a safe, a more secure position behind the building. And in sort of education and technical speak, that's called creating a safeguarded site. So pupils and the public or visitors never mix. And so what happens when you put a playground in front of a building means that essentially it becomes an obstacle between the front gate and the front door of the building. You're forcing any visitors to move through the playground space to get to the front door of the school, and that's something that we try and avoid. Purely in order to maintain a safeguarded school site. So that's one of the main reasons why the site master plan is as it is. In terms of the height of the fence, I may need to rely on a colleague for that particular detail. John or Brian, are you able to offer?
Height of the fence, the external fence of the fence around the Mooga, because you're saying the Mooga is going to be enveloped within the play area.
I think the acoustic fence, wasn't it? Or the boundary fence is typically 2.4 meters. I don't know if that answers that question, Daniel.
Yeah, and I suppose another point to make, that if you push the play area to the front of the site away from the housing, that also equally pushes the building toward the housing, which we don't really want to do, because that creates other issues of, the school building being near housing, where there could be risks of privacy and overlooking, and there wouldn't be sunlight because the sun comes from the south, but there might be daylight issues and overbearing issues. So it's generally good practice to keep taller buildings away from housing.
That's right, yeah. I mean, one of the slides mentioned that by putting the building where we're proposing, we're achieving a distance of 34 meters between the proposed building and the existing houses, and that's an improvement on the 24 meters that currently exists. So what we wouldn't want to do is to either A, reverse that, or B, make it worse.
No.
There's a very good reason for not following through on that suggestion.
Yeah, and just for comparison, I think the existing building from sort of ground level to ridge is about 10 meters. And to remind you of the overall building, the proposed building height?
The proposed building height will be around about 11.5 meters, I would suggest.
Roughly 1.5 meters taller compared to the ridge of the existing building, but 10 meters further away effectively.
Okay, and just to confirm, there is no lighting proposed on the Mooga?
It is not lit, no.
No, no lighting proposed, and that would also need to be a separate planning application if the school did want to propose it in future, John.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just talking about the proposed or lack of proposal for use of the mugger out of hours. At the moment, the proposed use of school property out of hours is restricted inside the building.
Okay, so I'm trying to combine these questions. We're getting a lot of questions through. So just to reaffirm, what form would any acoustic boundary take for properties in Beaconsfield Road? And can we just touch on what the fire access? Would it go through the mugger, through the car park? Where would fire access be?
I'll tackle the acoustics first, and then I'll pass Imran on to the fire. So we haven't yet confirmed that acoustic screening is necessary. The acoustic consultant has been to site and he's done his decibel, he's doing his testing, and I'm going to make an assessment. Generally, if an acoustic fencing is required, it forms a sort of it effectively looks like a timber fence, but it has a special decibel performance so that it captures lots of the noise level so that it doesn't go over the fence. Generally, from experience when I've used them, they've been between 2 meters and 2.4 meters, and that's the tallest they've come. But to the untrained eye, it would just look like a sort of a varnished wooden fence, really.
Okay. And the fire access?
So the fire access would typically be through the car park gates, and we can access any fire appliance vehicle would be able to access a sufficient amount of the building elevation to be able to neutralise any fire threat.
Okay. I'm reviewing the questions that are coming through. There may be a couple more design ones, but I'm going to move over to transport. Phil, the first one that we had before today is that there's that the resident notices the reception entrance is on the King Charles Road. Currently, there's a modal filter scheme in place, and the continuation of the scheme is currently being reviewed. Have we looked at the implications of opening up the road again? And has this aspect been considered in the planning? And also, do we think the school will impact on the LTN?
Well, the closure's been in place since we've been looking at the site, and we've done a traffic survey of movements at the junction with that in place. We've prepared trip assessments for the school, pupil and staff movements with and without the closure, so that we've got that information to present with the planning application. And we've agreed with the Highway Authority that should the closure be removed in time, we would do another survey to collect information to see what the changes are without it. In terms of the safety implications of the removal of the closure, or if it stays, the road's already subject to a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. It has a raised table junction. There's a 7.5 ton weight limit, and it's got bespoke pedestrian crossings at the raised table at the junction. So it already includes many of the features that you'd be looking to include around a school site. So there's no concerns in terms of the layout of the road in serving this location.
Okay, this falls still with you partially, Phil. It might end up being a bit design as well. So there's an existing access off King Charles Road, and
Yep.
The resident asked why can't the car park be in that northeast corner? Because the elevation on the road in the preferred scheme doesn't address the street well, but it's more about why can't the car park be in that corner?
I think that's been fairly well covered by the layout issues that Imran's already reviewed, but also in its location where it's proposed further to the west on Hollyfield Road, it reduces the potential for conflict with movements. We don't want too many turning movements close to where there's a junction already in place.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just checking if there's any more transport questions come through this evening. So this is a traffic one. Who enforces the traffic plan and conditions? The resident asks.
In terms of this
Once
site,
a planning, if a plan application were to be approved and the school were operating on site, who would be responsible for enforcing those plans and conditions? And also, I'm going to link that. This is one for you, John Smith. How have Gems Twickenham enforced a ban on parking in your nearby streets?
So I can sort of answer both of those actually. Regarding the school travel plan, you then work alongside the local authority with your school travel plan coordinator, who assesses that you're actually following that plan. And then really it's for the school to manage. So the way that we've enforced it is that, as I said earlier, when parents are admitted to the school, or children admitted to the school, they're all given a copy of the school travel policy and they have to sign it and agree to it. Also, the school site supervisor in the morning and in the evening is walking around the local area to check that people aren't parking where they're not supposed to be, unless obviously they're a blue badge holder, and that works effectively. I mean, you always have, a small degree of parents who, try to slip through the net, but that's been really positive. One of the things that's been introduced the last year, which we trialed during the initial lockdown, was a school street. So the road outside the school is closed to the public from 8:30 to 9:15, and again from 3:30 to 4:15, and that sort of helped with traffic as well. I appreciate that probably creates more further on, but it keeps the school safe. So really the answer is it's for the school to enforce and to follow the planning conditions. And then obviously, the community is sort of moderating us as well, and we're working with them to ensure that actually we're following that, and where residents may raise issues with us, we react to that really robustly.
Brilliant. And just in addition to that, from a planning perspective, thanks, John. I suppose residents would have a risk that what if we said we're going to do brilliant things in a travel plan and then suddenly the school put it in a drawer and never speak of it ever again. The planning permission will have conditions or obligations attached to the decision notice that will say the school must implement their travel plan and keep it updated and do regular surveys and update them with objectives. Should the school be failing in those objectives, or should it be forgotten about, etc., you as a resident will be entitled to speak with the council's planning department and say their condition 9 says you must comply with the travel plan, they're not doing that, and then the council will be able to contact the school and ensure that they will be complying with the school travel plan. So that condition will be attached to the planning permission in perpetuity. So there's several ways of ensuring that sustainable travel patterns are followed.
There's a question which I'll just pick up about why hasn't the council included the Avondale Gymnastics and the school cottage in the application? Again, you would need to refer that to the local authority. The local authority have sold the site on, and the application that's going forward is for the site that was sold. Moving back to a couple of design issues now. So more from Beaconsfield Road again. Just, I know we've picked this up in the early presentation, but just the residents asking about the building height, which he feels will overshadow the houses on Beaconsfield Road and affect their privacy and light. Just to pick up on that really, and what I know we've done the noise and light pollution for Beaconsfield Road, and also on that Beaconsfield Road, but is there a detailed analysis of how the build will affect flood risk on the stream? So I don't know if Brian and Imran, you can pick those ones up for Beaconsfield Road residents.
Okay, I'll start off with the massing and the building sort of relationship with the houses on Beaconsfield Road. So as we mentioned earlier, we're moving the building, or we're moving, the proposed building is going to be will be further away from the housing by a further 10 metres than the King Charles Centre currently sits. So 34 metres away from the housing as opposed to 24. We've done some analysis on the sort of the height of the building as it sits, and any sort of idea of overshadowing or overbearing, and we feel that there is that risk is impact is non-existent, just due to the distance between the housing and the proposed school building. So we feel we're well, that all those issues are well controlled there. I think with respect to the flood risk, part of the reason for putting the building where it is to stay outside of the flood risk zone and to minimise any displacement of flood water. But I'll let colleagues, I think Jonathan, you're probably best placed to talk about this particular issue.
Sure. Yeah. The lot is the car park in the vicinity of where the school is proposed. So obviously filling that area alone could have a detrimental effect on flood risk elsewhere. So to mitigate that, the playground area will be lowered by an equivalent amount to provide compensation storage. So in effect, just moving the low-lying area from where it is at the moment to the playground and mugger area.
Okay, colleagues, you may not have these answers to hand, but the two questions here: what's the present building height and what's the proposed building height? And also, how wide would the external canopies be on the ground floor?
10 metres to ridge and 11.5 metres in total for the proposed. And the canopy, from recollection, I remember, they're each 15 square metres, are they? You're on mute.
Something like that, yes, in that order.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. Question on the consultation timescale, saying it's asking why the consultation wasn't longer. It's a 17, 18-day public consultation at this stage, but as we've said, we are several months away from a determination of plan application. There will be a statutory plan application, and this consultation at this stage is after following discussions with officers at the local authority, is now to talk to local residents, businesses, stakeholders about the proposals, and bring forward a more detailed set of proposals for that plan application that will come forward. And when that application comes forward, there will be a statutory consultation at that stage undertaken by a local authority for comments prior to the determination of any planning application. Phil, I've got a couple more transport ones. So just querying, is there enough cycle spaces compared to the number of pupils, and will there be any scooter storage?
The provision of the cycle storage is in line with the Transport for London recommendations, which is 1 per 8 staff and pupils. And we've also got the short-term parking requirement met as well. As far as scooter short storage goes, I think John was mentioning earlier that they meant that there's quite a popular thing. There's not a statutory requirement in that at the moment, so that's maybe something that they can incorporate in with the cycle parking. Especially as the school's going to build up in numbers over the initial years, that's something they can assess with the travel plan and make adjustments if needed. Okay.
And scooters, did you?
Yeah, that was what I just mentioned. That's something really that they can monitor through. The travel plan will require them to undertake regular surveys of how pupils are travelling to the school, and if obviously that shows that there's a deficiency in some way in storage for scooters that's not been met, that will enable them to adjust perhaps the ratio that they've got for cycle parking or something to suit.
Okay, thank you. Trees, there's a question about the category of the trees that are currently on site. So, I don't know.
It's a mix between grade B and grade C. Currently, there are no grade A trees on site, and we are looking. I know that the recent plans that were on display earlier doesn't show a lot of tree retention, but trust me, that will be changing with all quality trees along both Hollyfield Road and King Charles Road. We're looking to retain. So they're grade B and grade C effectively, and some grade U, which are effectively dying, which will be removed as a matter of safety. But we'll be looking to retain the grade B and high quality grade C trees.
Okay, thanks. And there's a question about air pollution. So the resident asks, how are you going to protect local residents from air pollution caused by the demolition works? And also if there's any increased car usage, if there's air pollution caused by that, but predominantly from the demolition works. And again, saying it will affect light sources on houses to the east and shading on gardens and houses on King Charles Road. So what studies we've undertaken of that?
Given the distance, I'm not sure that it would be impacted, but we'll review it as part of the application, certainly, because there's a sort of a daylight sunlight test you do where you do a sort of a section line between the proposed building and the nearest house, and with that determines whether you need a more detailed scientific analysis. But yeah, we'll certainly address that within an application. With regard to air quality, our contractors are specialists in building schools around houses, and they work to specific construction management plans which form part of the planning application, and you'll be able to see it because we submit it up front, so that it can be properly scrutinised by both the council and the public, which outlines the hours of operation, but also control of dust and noise and how dust will be suppressed and etc. So that's the contractor is used to detailing those sorts of matters, or dealing with those sorts of matters as a part of the demolition, and so I wouldn't be overly concerned with that personally. And I suppose because it's a modular offsite construction with the build-up, a lot of the potentially dusty building works or dusty works as part of the construction would occur offsite, which is beneficial. With regard to quality of car usage, currently it's an adult education centre with 100 cars parked at it at the moment. So I think turning it to a school with 15 parking spaces for staff and the school making every effort to try to reduce car parking by private car to come to site, I don't think there'd be a substantial increase or any increase at all compared to what the previous use used to be, personally.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I think it's the last question is about parking, about where do we envisage parents may be parking, and what roads might that be if we have banned roads? Are we at that stage yet? Have we got to that stage?
It's something that we're still discussing with the Highway Authority. We appreciate that parking is perhaps at a premium in the area, but again, it comes down to the management, which will be done through the travel plan, but also this the fact that the demand will be spread out, so you're not looking to accommodate all of the traffic within the same time period. Things like park and stride initiatives through the travel plan will be looking at if there's an availability of parking within a 5-10 minute walk of the site, not necessarily right outside, then obviously it'd be appropriate to use that and walk from those locations. So we're also looking at some initiatives perhaps that, for example, if the road closure was to stay in place, they've effectively created a cul-de-sac to each side of the closure. Would the local authority consider that as make a suitable area for some short-term parking for pick-up and drop-off, things like that? But the things that we're still considering.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. So I think with the questions that were either tabled in advance or this evening, we've answered the team. Obviously, we're at an early stage still receiving. We've received comments via the consultation website over the last few days, but that's still open for a further 12 days. We'll be considering those, and as I say, they'll be collated and shared with the project team. And clearly, as we've said tonight, particularly on design and trees, there'll be work being undertaken in those areas. That work's being undertaken currently, and there's a number of areas, as we've just said as well, on transport, where that work's still being undertaken in advance of planning application. So by all means, there's another consultation event next Monday, and we're reviewing those comments, and if there's any queries, questions, continue to submit those via the website, via the free phone. And thanks to colleagues for your time this evening, and thanks particularly to residents and members of the public for having attended and having table questions. And I hope it's been a useful presentation of where we are currently. And as I say, we're a long way still to go down this road in terms of, firstly, initially the submission plan application, and then the statutory consultation, then the determination of planning application. So thanks everyone for attending this evening.